durjayanitaraashramai vayam jayamahe labir tasyundugapatiryata yamashitendriyaryatain durjayanitaraashramai vayam jayamahe labir tasyundugapatiryata. Transliteration: Yam, whom, ashritya, taking shelter of, indriya, senses, arathin, enemies, durjayan, difficult to conquer, itara, other than the householders, ashramahi, by orders of society, vayam, we, jayema, can conquer, helabihi, easily, dasyun, invading plunderers, durgapatihi, O fort commander, yata, as. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. As a fort commander, very easily conquers invading plunderers. By taking shelter of a wife, one can conquer the senses which are unconquerable in the other social orders. Purport. Of the four orders of human society, the student or brahmachari order, the householder or the grahastha order, the retired or vanaprastha order, and the renounced sannyas order, the householder is on the safe side. The bodily senses are considered plunderers of the fort of the body. The wife is supposed to be the commander of the fort, and therefore, whenever there is an attack on the body by the senses, it is the wife who protects the body from being smashed. The sex demand is inevitable for everyone, but one who has a fixed wife is saved from the onslaught of the sense enemies. A man who possesses a good wife does not create a disturbance in society by corrupting virgin girls. Without a fixed wife, a man becomes a debauchee of the first order and is a nuisance in society. Unless he is trained brahmachari, vanaprastha or sannyasi, unless there is a rigid and systematic training of the brahmachari by the expert spiritual master, and unless the student is obedient, it is sure the so-called brahmachari will fall prey to the attack of sex. There are so many instances of fall down, even for great yogis like Vishwamitra. A grahastha is saved, however, because of his faithful wife. Sex life is the cause of material bondage. Therefore, it is prohibited in 3 ashrams and is allowed only in the grahastha ashram. The grahastha is responsible for producing first quality brahmacharis, vanaprasthas and sannyasis. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Shakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shuddhapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Shagan Vitam Sha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prasharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Tesha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyasha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurathise Namaha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Toy vasmi, vina iti vigya devitvam naimam charanantikam. Hare Krishna everyone. Welcome to today's Bhagavatam class, chapter Pregnancy of Diti in the evening. As a fort commander very easily conquers invading plunderers, by taking shelter of a wife, one can conquer the senses, which are unconquerable in the other social orders. The living entities, the spirit souls we are, decided to enjoy independent of Krishna. So we have rebelled against Krishna and ended up in this material world. This material world is not a suitable place for the living entities. It's a temporary arrangement provided by the Lord, so we can fulfill or try to fulfill our desires which we hope to attain. And this temporary place is held together, holds the living entities together by sex desire. And the sex desire is what is binding the living entity to this material world. So we decided to stay in this material world. To stay in this material world, the sex desire is provided to hold us here. And because of the sex desire, we have chosen this temporary place as a permanent place, and we've been living here for time immemorial. The song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what is that? Anadi karma phale. Paribare, what is it? Paribare? Paribare, varnan jale. So, anadi karma phale. For time unlimited, anadi karma phale. Because of fruitive actions resulting out of sex desire, we are in this samsara, the ocean of suffering, for a long time. And this ocean is not a pleasant ocean, it is a poisoned ocean, halahale. There's a constant pain inflicted in this ocean. It's not like we go for a swim and a hot day and it's nice, we spend a couple of hours and then we sunbake and come back. No, the material ocean is described as halahal. Halahal means the ocean made of poison. So every dip we take in this ocean is stinging us and causing us suffering and pain. And because of this suffering and pain, general idea is we want to get out. But because of our attachment for sex desire, we are unable to get out of this ocean. So that's the predicament the living entities are put or situated ourselves. And this extends not just to us, it extends from topmost planetary system to all the way to insignificant living entity. Brahma Samhita, one of the verses, Tava Tva Indra Gopa Athavendra Ahosva Karmaha Bandhanurupa Falabhajam Avapanoti. Starting from Lord Indra all the way to Indra Gopa. Indra Gopa is a small little bug, red color bug. To that bug, we are all bandhanurupam, we are all bound by our own swakarma. Because of our fugitive activities, we are bound in this world. And we are stuck and we can't, there is no place to go. In the same poem, Anadi Karma Phale, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, we are stuck here and we don't know what to do, which direction to go. So that is our predicament. So Krishna is very kind. So when we rebelled against him and wanted our own place to enjoy, he provides the place, and he also provides various opportunities for us to get out of this karma phala. The first offer is pure devotional service. The living entity is offered pure devotional service. By this pure devotional service, one can easily traverse the ocean of material suffering. One can easily get out of this material world. The same verse in Brahma Samhita, it says, Karmandi nirdahati chakintu bhakti bhajam. By taking bhakti, by taking devotional service, karmadi, the ocean of karma we have accumulated is easily traversed, or Krishna easily writes it off. You know what writing it off is? If there was a small debt and you can't pay, somebody just says, okay, I'll write it off, don't worry about it, let's have a clean slate. So Krishna writes all this anadi karma phala when we take pure devotional service. So that's the first offer. A living entity understands his anadi karma phala, he's been here for many lifetimes, and takes up Krishna's offer and becomes a pure devotee and gets out of this material world. But that is a very rare happening. Very rare happening. Even in scriptures we see the instances are only few instances where people who got pure devotion service purified themselves and went home back to Godhead. The instances are like Mrigari the hunter. Mrigari was a very sinful person. But as soon as he heard the instructions of Narada Muni, he immediately gave up his sinful nature. He was very sinful. He was so sinful that he's an example for a sinful person. If they want to quote a sinful person in the scriptures, they quote Mrigari. But Mrigari, the good thing about Mrigari is, as soon as he heard the instructions of Narada Muni, he had complete faith in Narada and completely took up devotional service immediately. He didn't wait around. He didn't ask questions like, who is going to feed my family? Who is going to feed my children? Who is going to look after my clan? He didn't ask all those questions. He immediately took up devotional service. And by taking up immediate devotional service, it means he immediately gave up sinful activities and simultaneously took up a devotional service to the Lord, and he became successful. And there's other instances, Ratnakara or Valmiki, the same story. He heard he was a plunderer, and when Narada Muni came across Valmiki. Valmiki got instructed by Narada Muni. And same thing, Valmiki immediately gave up the sinful activities and desire for performing sinful activities. And he took up Narada's instruction and followed it purely and became successful. So, when a pure devotee offers devotional service, an individual has to completely surrender and give up the sinful activities, what they are bound to. And by giving up the sinful activities, he will be able to quickly achieve the ultimate goal. But these are very odd occasions. People in general, you and me, I'll extend us for argument's sake. You and me, we hear the devotional instructions from the scriptures, but for us to give up sinful activities immediately is not possible. We hear the same instructions what Narada Muni received. We hear the same instructions what Valmiki received. We hear the same instructions what the other example is Ajamil. Same thing, Ajamil, as soon as he heard the conversation, he immediately gave up. He didn't think, I have a young child. Who is going to look after the young child? He didn't think about that. He immediately gave up his family. He rushed to Varanasi, Kasi, and he engaged in pure devotional service. So for living entities who can do that, yes, pure devotional service is available. For entities who cannot take up pure devotional service immediately and give up sinful activities at that very moment of getting that instruction, what happens? What do we do? Now, you can't be a pretender. Adharmi is worse. Becoming a pretender or dharma dvaja is worse. So you dress yourself in a robe of sadhu and you have the secret desires, you're harboring the secret desires, and they manifest every opportunity it gets. So that's not viable, that's not the proper way. And if you do that, you are just getting dragged down. You're lying to yourself, you're cheating the public, and you're trying to cheat Krishna himself. So you get dragged more and more into sinful actions and reactions, and the destination becomes harder and harder. So that is the predicament of most of the living entities, even who take up devotional service or who come into the association of devotees and here, because it's very hard to give up the sinful desire of living entity. So in that predicament, what do? You can't become a pure devotee. You can't become like Rupan Raghunath, who left the family, wealthy family, and went to Vrindavan. You're bound with sinful desires. Even if you go to Vrindavan, you're still harboring, you're still, Prabhupada says, there's so many monkeys in Vrindavan, and, they're all false renunciate. It's not even Bhaktisiddhanta says, there's so many monkeys, and they're all running around as false renunciates without dress. One of the qualities of renunciate is give up everything material. So these monkeys are also given up the dress, and they are running around. But as soon as there's an opportunity to have sex, they immediately engage in sexual desire. So it's Marakata Vairagya, or the renunciation of a monkey. So a person who is not completely purified of his desire, artificially accepting the role of a renunciate, just becomes a monkey renunciate or a false pretender. And that is worse. So, considering this, Krishna offers the Varnashram system. In Bhagavad Gita 4, chapter 4, text 13, Krishna says, Chaturvarnam maha maya shishtam guna karma vibhagacha. So, according to one's nature, guna and karma and activity, Krishna has given this varnashram system through which one can gradually elevate himself. So he doesn't need to be a pretender. He doesn't need to be a pretender. One goes through this process of varnashram, purifies himself of his sensual desires, and progresses. Even though this process is gradual or seemingly gradual, it immediately puts a person in a progressive path. He is not in a destructive path. Living an adharmic life is destructive. What is that? Karmanya bodayantam akarmana. Vikarmana cha bodayantam. Gahana something vidhi. So, how the karma and vikarma works is very complex. And a person should be careful not to get into vikarma. Vikarma means activities which are sinful. And one has to place himself in akarma, activities which doesn't produce cause and effect. And that is devotional service. And that, if you can't follow in a pure sense, you put yourself in a place, in an institution called varnashram, where you gradually purify yourself. And therefore, from a very beginning of life, a person is trained. Even before a child is born, the Pumsavana ceremony is done, or Garbhadana samskara is done. So the living entity born is purified from the very moment it is conceived. And then there's gradually trained, after the child is born, it's gradually trained in brahmacharya. The brahmacharya is not only learning the scriptures, but also how to control the senses. So from a very early age, one is trained how to control the senses. And then, when the brahmacharya becomes a matured adult, he is provided with an opportunity to enjoy sex within the confines of dharma. Within the confines of dharma, which is grihastha ashram. So as soon as a child becomes an adult, it has sex desire. In spite of training, the sex desire is very prominent. What happens if a person goes through training, goes through how to control his senses, but still he can't control his senses? One option is you become adharmic. It means you start going around chasing women. And if you go around chasing women, it hinders your progress in devotional service because it's adharmic. The other, it also pollutes the womanhood. The women are polluted. Adharma bhavet Krishna pradusyanti kulastriya. What is that? Strishu dushtashu vashneya jayate varna shankara. So when the adharma becomes prevalent, or if a person who is not provided an opportunity to control his senses in a dharmic way, acts out adharmically, he pollutes womanhood. And women are easily subject to pollution, or they can be easily manipulated. So, if there's uncontrolled men with uncontrolled senses, they can easily manipulate the womanhood. And by manipulating the womanhood and not following the dharma, the progeny produced are varna shankara. And if the progeny produced are varna shankara, they cause chaos in the society, and there's only madness. And when there's only madness, there is no opportunity to practice devotional service for even who are trained properly. It becomes very difficult. So if the world is full of rogues and rascals, as Prabhupada says, which is at the moment, it's very difficult for one to perform devotional service. So, for example, in a summer month, you walk out, all the men are running around half naked. It's very hard to control your senses. So, as a society, by and large, if they are spoiled, which is now, even for somebody who wants to practice it properly, it becomes very difficult. So, Krishna offers this varnashram as a wholesale for the whole society to act in certain ways so one's senses are controlled properly. And so a person, instead of accepting adharmic way and exploiting his sex desire, polluting the womanhood, gets a qualified, well-trained wife. A qualified, well-trained wife is here glorified. She is glorified as a commander of the family. And that commander holds the fort. People say, hold the fort. It's a common terminology we say. I'm just going out to the shop, can you hold the fort? Hold the fort is a common, we use. So holding the fort. So the man is busy providing for the family, a grahastha. So what happens? A grahastha is also responsible not just to provide for the family. He's also responsible to look after all the other 3 ashrams and varnas. So he has a very big responsibility. So he is dealing with the material nature much more closely. He's going to work. He is dealing with people who might be or might not be trained. And he is getting involved in making money. And these activities are constantly disturbing the fighter. But the wife at home, who is trained well, when the fighter comes home, she protects him. And by being a faithful, responsible wife, she looks after him. You go to work, even in simple terms, you go to work, you're working 8 hours. You start at 9 o'clock, you come home at 5 o'clock and you commute for another hour. You get home at 6. Then the guy has to worry about, what am I going to eat? No, the wife has prepared a nice prasadam. So that he doesn't need to worry about eating. And he is dealing with all this adharmic people. When it comes to home, the house is devotional. It's set up in a very devotional, pleasing way. It's clean. There is deities nicely worshipped. There is fragrance of incense from the altar. The deities are nicely decorated at home. And these are the responsibilities of the wife. By doing this, when a guy comes home, in spite of him dealing with outside world, coming home becomes a retreat where he is immediately reminded of devotional service or his duty towards Krishna. So the wife who's trained and well qualified can set up the situation for a soldier to come home and retreat. And not only that, there is sex desire. There is sex desire. And the wife, a chaste wife, also satisfies the sex desire of the man. So by doing this, she is giving an opportunity to give a spiritual respite for the man. And also, if the senses need to be engaged, there's wife to provide that opportunity. And if it is not there, then again, adharmic, a man takes up adharmic way. And then that degrades the society. So, in this way, it's a ecosystem where the man provides for the family, and the woman looks after the household, and this becomes the grahastha ashram. And through this grahastha ashram, there's a gradually the desire for enjoyment reduces. Because naturally the senses are, if you're eating the same rasgulla every day, after some time, you don't want to eat it anymore. No. So being in a family life, dealing with the same individual, sexually or non-sexually or as a company-wise, after 20 or 25 years, a person naturally has a tendency to renounce. Naturally has an opportunity to renounce. But if you live in an adharmic way, you are going out with one person today, and in 6 months' time you are going out with another person, and in another 6 months you are going out with another person. So this engagement of sex is keep burning and burning and burning, because it's not, you're constantly on the hunt for more enjoyment. And since you haven't stayed with one individual, there's a word in my language, but I don't know what's the word in Tamil. In English, after eating the same thing, you become disgusted. That doesn't happen. There's no opportunity for that to happen. So you're just going from one person to another person. So it also prevents a person from naturally renouncing. Like if you look at the modern, so-called the society at the moment, and I was talking to a friend of mine, who comes now and then, and he was telling, I didn't see him for a long time, so I asked him, how you doing, how's your father? And he says, my father is getting old, he's 80, he just got himself a new girlfriend and he moved into city. 80 years old. So, if you're always in the hunt for a new girlfriend, it never ends. But if one takes up grahastha ashram, engages his senses in a controlled fashion, so it's naturally one renounces that situation. And then he can go on to vanaprastha. And when he enters vanaprastha, he knows what he has gone through. So it gives him the strength to push forward. He's not thinking, I don't know, maybe I'm missing out something here. Did I miss out something? Am I, all these guys, they all went through, maybe I'm a loser here, I didn't, So, he doesn't give him that thought. He doesn't feel left out. If you're not a very good player in a team, you get picked the last. One is thinking, maybe I didn't get picked because, I'm not really good. You start contemplating, in his 50s, maybe I should try. So, no, that's not the case. A person who's gone through this, he's thinking, no, I've been there. I know how difficult it is. I know how difficult is it to go to a job 9 to 5, take the children to school, bring them back, train them up, live with the wife, maintain the family, pay the mortgage. It's not an easy thing. I don't want to, I've been there, done it. I don't want to do it again. So it gives a natural inclination for one to move forward and not look back. So one purifies himself, he solidifies his detachment in the vanaprastha ashram. And then when he is fully solidified, he has an opportunity to take sannyas, or he can just practice vanaprastha and perfect his devotional service and go back to Godhead. But if he decides to take sannyas, he is also equipped, because he has seen how difficult is the grahastha ashram, what are the pitfalls of associating with opposite sex. So he is aware of it. And when, as a sannyasi, as a preacher, sannyasi generally are preachers, when they are preaching, it means they are preaching to the other 3 ashrams, he is dealing with them. but still he can maintain the distance because he has got burnt or he has learned his lesson. Like, there's nice fire, you tell the child not to touch it, it looks beautiful, the child wants to touch it. But, when the child touches it and burns itself, it knows what's the consequence. Similarly, a sannyasi, since he has gone through these ashrams and attained sannyas, he understands the pitfalls. So when he is dealing with the other 3 ashrams, he can maintain the distance. He knows he can operate without getting entangled. So, this system is provided by Krishna himself, so that one can traverse through this material world without looking back. Looking back means hoping the sex can provide some happiness in this world. And this system protects one from very birth all the way one gives up this body and places him in a dharmic life. And as a society, even coming to modern terms, we are extensively preaching. It's a preaching mission. It's not a Bhajananandi mission. It's not like Rupa and Sanatan. They gave up family life and they went to Vrindavan and they wrote books and they chanted, 1 lakh round or something. Now we are preaching mission. We are actively gaining people to take up devotional service. And when we actively take up people coming to devotional service, we can't all have them living in the temple. There's no enough real estate. Maybe 30, 40 years ago, the movement means people who lived in the temple or just lived around the temple. That is, are you second generation? No, okay. The LA temple, people lived, brahmacharis lived in LA temple and they had few houses around and they all lived outside. Now, that is the movement. Even when I came to Sydney, just very handful of people living outside. Most of the brahmacharis, they all lived in the temple. Grahasthas also, had service in the temple. They were pujaris or, they were managers or treasurers and they get paid by the temple. So the system was completely dependent on temple. But now, there's masses and masses of people joining or taking up Krishna consciousness because that's our mission, we are preaching. So when we are preaching and masses of these people joining, what do they do? How do they engage? How they purify themselves? Going back to the beginning of the class, it's not like everybody who walks in or hears immediately gives up their material attachments and takes up pure devotional service. No. There's a substantial gap between when we hear, when you take up devotional service, and when you become a pure devotee. There's a substantial gap in one's life. One has to, navigate through. So this substantial gap, what do? Now you can't go and take the prescription offered by the mundane society because that's geared towards sense gratification. Children, they are encouraged to have sex in a very young age. When they are teenagers, the parents are asking if a child doesn't have a girlfriend when they are 12, 13, 14, or if a girl doesn't have a boyfriend when they are 12, 13, 14. Hey, I was just thinking about you this morning. It's been a long time. Yeah. So when you're 13 and 14, the parents are asking, what's wrong with you? You don't have a girlfriend or boyfriend. It means that they are actively encouraging them to indulge in sex desire. And if you don't, they think there's something wrong with you. They're thinking, maybe do you like the same sex or, what's wrong? So that's what is offered outside, for this gap to be filled. If you send your kids to school, this is the culture you're sending the kids to school. If you go to work, men go to work, women go to work, and this is what you're dealing with. The men are all absolutely lusty, eating meat. And they're all, you're dealing with, the women of the household are dealing with them. So, to fill this gap, you have an opportunity, you have only a few options. One, you take up what the mundane world dictates. And what the mundane world dictates is predominantly based on adharmic lifestyle. Based on alcohol, meat eating, intoxication, gross sensual pleasures like sports, football. You take your football. As a child, you need to be recognized with the football team in Australia. Anybody who grew up here? Did you grow up here? What was your team growing up? Football or cricket, whatever. The Parramatta Eagles. You are from the very child. Your identity is based on if Parramatta Eagles wins or not. Not about becoming pure devotee or not. So this gap, starting pure devotional service, to becoming a pure devotee, if you deal outside, this is what, is prescribed. You become the fan of Sydney Swans, or I don't know, there's too many of them. And this is grossly affects your progress towards devotional life. Grossly affects progress towards devotional life. You have to go to office parties. Okay, the men takes the risk to go to work to bring in money. Okay, well, if you're a female, you have to go to work. You have to go to office party. And what happens in office party? Men get, lusty men get drunk. Lusty men getting drunk. What happens? So, that's why Krishna offers Varnashram Dharma. So this gap can be filled where a living entity practices Dharma, practices devotional service in a regulated fashion. So he is not brought down by the onslaught of material energy. And there's no other way. There's no other way. Because we are not Mrigari. We are not Valmiki. We are not Ajamil. The day I got the book, I read Bhagavad Gita, I said, that's it. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm His eternal servant. Everything is Maya. I have to go and perform pure devotion service. I'm giving up my family. I'm heading out. That doesn't happen to us. And you can't even expect that to happen. It's unrealistic. For somebody to bank on pure devotion service. You can't bank on pure devotion service in a neophyte state. You have to purify yourself. And the purification can happen on the platform of Varnashram. Varnashram gives that platform so you can purify yourself. And without that platform, you're alone in this world dealing with gross material onslaught. And to protect oneself from that gross material onslaught, here even Kashyapa, glorifies the importance of a chaste wife. A chaste, responsible, trained wife. his definition of chaste, responsible, trained wife is not somebody who goes to uni, gets a couple of degrees, want to compete with men, and has a career ambitions to work shoulder to shoulder with men. That's not his definition. His definition of a responsible wife in previous verses you can see is that she has accepted a simplistic life, has accepted to serve her husband faithfully and assist him in his devotional service. So that's a definition of a learned wife, according to Bhagavatam. So, it's a system given by Krishna himself, so that one can gradually purify ourselves, and without that process, we are left alone. And that's the importance of varnashram. One has to practice. Again, Prabhupada wanted us to establish varnashram. There's a lot of controversies and demonization of varnashram, especially from the neo-feminist movement within ISKCON. They think varnashram is there to subdue them or something. But, let them have their views. We follow what the acharyas have said, and based on that, it is a duty of the future generation to establish varnashram and have a have a compound. It's a, I don't know. The compound is a terminology used in my part of the English where I come from. A fence. Fence is the better way. Have that fence to keep the herd in dharmic process. That's a fence. One might ask, do you need the fence? Yeah, you don't need the fence if everybody is well behaved. But the innate nature is we are not well behaved. So we need that fence. So even though varnashram is a lower standard, even though it's a material provision, but it is a provision provided by the Lord himself for the gradual upliftment of the society by and large. And Prabhupada gave us a hint how it can be established. He said varnashram can be established through farm communities. So, by having farms where you produce your own grains, you're dependent on the land, you don't need to deal with the material world too much. The interaction becomes less. Instead of spending 8 hours with your peers at work, you spend 8 hours, maybe farming and with fellow devotees. So through this, Prabhupada predicted that varnashram will be re-established. So that's the hope. And in that note, it's time. I will finish here. If you have any questions or comments or corrections, fire away.
Criticized, saying that he was Sukshutra and they didn't take him as his Kshatriya because he was trained in Kshatriya. Now by birth he might be Sukshutra. But he was always criticized.
Yeah.
So, because that fear is there in even now, because once we get into varnashrama, so people might abuse, not immediately as if they will learn someone is on the lower level of it.
Yeah.
People might be misused.
Yeah.
That kind of mentality is there.
It's definitely there. The other option is hanging out with drunk, lusty men, sending your children to schools where meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex is taught. So that's the other risk. What do you choose? You being a Shudra and somebody calling you a Shudra is bigger problem, or you want to lord it over and you send your kids and they get girlfriends in there when they're 18, when they finish their school, they already have girlfriends Even devotee children. And they have kami girlfriends, and it's difficult to follow devotional service with all the protection, What to speak of, you're married to, or you're engaging in active sex life. So one has to see. To make sense? Of course, in a well-established varnashram, a non-exploitive varnashram, based on, that's why it's not like we are propagating mundane varnashram, we are propagating varnashram where devotional service is dominant. Yeah, when the devotional service is dominant, and your goal is not to become a successful varnashram practicer. Your goal is to gradually purify yourself through the platform of varnashram, and with the goal, always thinking, I'm going to give up all this and engage in pure devotional service. So there's a bit of a difference there. So by doing that, you're not treating your fellow members as low class or high class. When you're quoting Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, where a trained person is not respected. That's why Krishna appeared to establish Dharma. To make sense? Varnashram is spoiled, so Krishna has come to establish the proper Dharma. The proper Dharma is to act your nature for the service of the Lord, or act for the Lord and simultaneously follow your Dharma. So Krishna came to establish it. You're absolutely right. They've been misusing it. Karna, a very qualified person, he's been humiliated. So Krishna came and established it. Established the right varnashram. And even last 300, 400, 500 years ago, especially Prabhupada quotes about South India, where I come from, it was very a horrible situation. Yeah. And Mahaprabhu came and establishes the Dharma. He doesn't discriminate. Only Brahmanas are allowed to chant mantras. Before, even like when I took up, when I was young, and it was unheard of for somebody to get Brahmin initiated. If you're not born, it doesn't happen. But Mahaprabhu established this Dharma. Established as the right varnashram. Prabhupada wanted that. The right way, it has to be run in a right way. It is not an exploitive varnashram. Ravana followed varnashram. Hiranyakashipu followed varnashram. The Kurus followed varnashram. But that was based on exploiting. That wasn't based on devotion. So the varnashram, what Prabhupada establishes, is based on devotion. And when it is based on devotion, you are performing the role very dutifully and you have respect for everyone. You're talking about varnashram, this and that. One of the major problems of mundane education, we are sending your children to school, one of the major problem is, there's gross problems. The most subtle problem is they don't know how to respect elders. One of the major, kids who are trained through modern education, they don't know how to deal with seniors. Even within our own society, you can see. They think they are able to do it within their own strength. It's one of the major issues you can see. But the devotional service flows through surrender to elders and qualified people, respecting them, and through their mercy you get. But the people who take up devotional service through the modern system, they have this attitude I can do it myself. They don't care for seniors. You know what I'm saying? So, here we go. Not depending on mundane has its consequences. Even within devotional, even it gets reflected even within devotional service. That's why Rupa Goswami says, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidimbina Ekantaki Hari Bhakti Utpaya Eva Kalpade. Even devotional service to Vishnu performed without following the injunctions of scriptures will only cause chaos in society. Only chaos in society. So, there's a reason. We can't intellectualize and say, it didn't work well, so we'll ditch. What's that? You ditch the baby with the bathtub, or you burn the house because there's mouse in the house. No, you just need to know how to do it properly and efficiently. Make sense? Yes. Any more questions, comments? No? Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Nitai Go Premanande. Vanchakalpatarabhyasha Kripasindhve Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.